In this video, we will see what are pointers. So, we know variable has a memory location or address associated with it. Suppose you have a variable x. Okay. So, x is equal to suppose 25. So we know that x variable in the memory is placed somewhere. Suppose x is of integer type, okay, int x. So this x is suppose stored at this memory location, okay, the value 25, and x has some address associated with it, suppose 1000, okay. So when we write int x is equal to 25, so what happens, this x variable is associated a memory location, is given a memory location, and the value 25 is assigned to it. Now if it is of integer type, then what happens, integer type, suppose your compiler supports 2 bytes for integer. Suppose a compiler supports 2 bytes for integer data type, and this one cell is of 1 byte, okay. So these two cells will be allocated to your x variable, and the starting address is your 1000, which is of this cell. So what will be the address of the next cell? 1001. So 25 value is associated with these both addresses, but the starting address is your 1000. This happens when you assign a variable with some value. Next we will see that after declaring a variable, the compiler automatically allocates a reserved amount of memory for the variable depending on its data type. So this is where we have seen that after declaring a variable, the compiler automatically allocates a reserved amount. Reserved amount of memory means if it is of integer type, then you are allocated 2 bytes. If it is of float type, then the memory that will be allocated may be of 4 bytes. If it is of char, if your variable is of char data type, then 1 byte memory is allocated to it. Next we can see, so what is now a pointer? Pointer is a variable. Remember, pointer is also a variable, alright, that is used to store the memory address, alright, of other variables, alright. So what does pointer stores? It stores the memory address. What it is going to store? Memory address. Whose memory address? Of some other variable only, alright. So pointer is a variable. Suppose some pointer is p, okay. This p is your pointer variable. Suppose this is your pointer variable. Just like x, it is also a variable. So if it is a variable means what? There will be a memory location associated with this variable. Suppose some memory location associated is this with the variable p. So what it is going to store over here? What will be the value? The value will be the memory address. The memory address of other variable. Okay, so here you are going to store the memory address. Suppose we are storing the memory address of x. So you are going to store 1000 over here. So pointer is a variable that is used to store the memory address of other variable. Okay. Now let's see this. There are two symbols used in pointers. First is your ampersand symbol, which is called as reference operator, and the asterisk symbol, which is called as dereference operator. Okay. So the use of this we will see in further video. How do we declare pointers? So declaration of pointers, we use this format: data type star pointer, alright, or this star can be placed here also with some space and pointer. What is this pointer? This is your variable name. Alright, this is your pointer variable name. And this star and data type. What is this data type? What data type? See, pointer is going to store your memory address. When if you consider your normal variable int x, alright, so what x has what data type? Int data type. So what will be the amount of memory allocated to x? What does data type say? Data type says what amount of memory this x is going to occupy. Alright, what memory space? So x is going to occupy suppose 2 bytes. So how it is getting confirmed? With this integer data type. Alright. So this pointer data type doesn't say that pointer is going to store which value. Okay. This data type tells the data type of the variable. Suppose p is equal to address of x. So this address is stored in p. Alright. In the earlier example, we have seen that the address of x, that is 1000, is stored in your p. Okay. So all the memory addresses are going to have the same data type. So what is the meaning of using here this data type? See, int type, if this x is stored in p, then the pointer data type will be your int. This data type tells you that which variable address, which data type variable address this p is storing. Okay. Let's see this example in which we initialize pointer. So int num is equal to 5. Int num is equal to 5. When this line is executed, what happens? In the memory, alright, this num variable is allocated. Alright, what data type it is? Integer data type. So suppose integer is of your 2 bytes. Alright, so what happens? These two cells, suppose, is allocated to variable num. Alright, and these two cells have address, suppose 1000, 1001. Alright, suppose each cell in the memory is of 1 byte, and since num is your integer data type, so you are going to allocate 2 bytes of space. Now what value you are going to keep in this? Num is equal to 5. So these memory cells will store the value 5 in it. Okay. So when you execute the first line, this is what is happening. Now we see int star p. What we are doing here? We are declaring pointer. We are declaring pointer variable, that is your p. Pointer variable p. Alright. Now since p is also your variable, so it is num was also variable, so it has a data type and it was stored in your memory location, memory. Alright, so p will also be stored in your memory. Why? Because pointer p is a pointer variable, so p is also stored somewhere in the memory. Alright, it is also associated. Suppose the address of memory cell is here 2000. Alright, so now what data type int says? P is your of int data type. So what this int says? Int says that whenever this p whatever address you are going to store in this p, this address will be of always of integer variable. Alright, see in the next line, when you write here int star p, what happens? This pointer variable p is also associated with some memory location and it also has some address. Okay, we have not given any value here yet. In the next line, what happens? P is equal to address of num. This symbol is what? Address of operator. Alright, this is reference operator. So what is num? Num is your variable which you created over here. So where is num in the memory? Here it is. Alright, here is your num. So the address associated with num is 1000 and 1001, but it is going to take the first address. Alright, first cell address it is going to take. So P is equal to address of num. So what is address of num? Address of num, this whole thing is going to return 1000, and this 1000 is stored in your variable P. So this 1000 is stored in your variable P. So what is value of P? Value of P is your 1000 and it is associated with memory address 2000. That is, like this you can say that if P is your sum memory, is your variable, alright, which has memory address 2000 and value 1000 stored in it. Num is another variable, alright, whose starting address is 1000 and 5 is the value stored in it. So this is what happens. Now this integer data type of P pointer, what does it says? What happens when you will ask the value of num, when you will refer from 1000 to this location? So it is going to access this first cell only. But how much bytes is num storing? 2 bytes. Alright. So how will this P pointer know how many bytes to take from here? How many bytes this num variable is storing? It is going to know from this data type. That is the data type you have given to the pointer variable. Okay. Next we can see this very important point, that memory allocation address will vary machine to machine. Alright, because machine to machine means every time when you run on different processors, then some processor gives integer 2 bytes space, some gives 4 bytes space. So it depends on machine to machine. Okay, and also it can change upon different execution. That is, first time you have run the program, the address associated with num is 1000. Alright, the address associated with num is 1000 and with P variable is your 2000. Next time when you run the code, there will be some different address associated with it. Suppose num is 3000 and P is 1005. This may be. So every time you are going to execute the code, your machine, your variable address may change. Next, let's conclude. Pointer is a way to access a variable by storing its memory location. So why we are using pointer? Pointer is used to access a variable by storing its memory location. So from here P pointer, what you are doing? You are accessing this variable num. Alright, you are accessing this variable num, the value stored inside this variable. And how you have accessed it? By storing the memory location of num. So this memory location you have stored in P. Alright, so pointer is simply a variable that stores the memory location of another variable. Okay, so P is a pointer that stored the memory location of another variable num in this example.